don't realize until you come out of a hospital the amount of money that's left on the table every single time.
You're starting off. What's your A team? Who do you hire? You are at 500,000 revenue. Who did you add to your team?
Where there's a problem, there is margin to be made. So take a step back, take a deep breath and a long exhale, and then go back and say, okay, what do we need to do for this shit to never happen again?
What things, if you're growing at 5, 7, 8%, can you tighten up with what you have already that will get you to 10% growth, 15% growth?
Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
Hello, Life of Flow fam. Welcome to another episode. And today we don't kick off because we kind of started with a returning champ, Dr. Pedro Martinez-Clark, and we're going to develop a mini series on mastering the independent practice. And Dr. Clark is full of knowledge on this topic.
Baller.
He's a baller. Baller from Colombia, living in Miami. Who else said we're living the dream? So hope to help you guys also live your dream in achieving independence. So vamos. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast. And we have a returning champion,
Repeat offender.
Pedro Martinez-Clark, directly from the beautiful state of Florida, where a lot of crazy things happen. But great care. Pedro, today, I think we're going to make this part of our we'll have some mini series. And today is the mastery of independent practice, let's call it. And today we're going to talk about growth and scale. Obviously, you have achieved that. Last time we talked, I think you had 3 different sites of services, or working on 3 different sites of services in Florida. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of like where you're getting to, Miguel.
I was going to say this is unwanting it because it was your idea, but it is exactly what fits us. I'm actually now, one of the beautiful things about this phase of my life is with how easy information is out there. Most of the information is out there. And so I've been consuming some information. And I'll share here later a little bit about this book on how to scale. But it's super timely, and I can't wait to hear Pedro's opinions on, how to go about this, what strategies to use, how to know when to push and when to stop, managing complex financial, you need to invest to make. And so when do you reach out a little bit more or not? And so all these questions I think would be really interesting for us to, try to nail down and dissect. What do you think?
Pedro, was there a moment? Yeah, go ahead.
No, absolutely. It's an amazing topic. It's also very timely because I've been dealing with question of how to scale. I've learned a couple of things about the process, and I think I can give a couple of pointers from my style. So basically, from my perspective, as you guys know, we have a cardiovascular practice here in Miami, Florida. The practice is comprised of several kind of divisions, if you will. The first one is the clinical enterprise, which is the regular clinic, bread and butter studies that are performed that most physicians are familiar with. The second one is the research enterprise, and the third one is the outpatient surgical center enterprise. And then there is a non-for-profit arm to the practice, and the non-for-profit is very important for us because it brings us very close or closer to the community. And one thing that we haven't really talked about that much is a project that I've been very involved with, which is the implementation of artificial intelligence in cardiovascular workflows to make them more efficient and streamlined, etc. And I would say that from a scaling perspective, there are 2 two angles are important. One is as an entrepreneur, as a visionary person, you have an idea, you have a goal, and you have to be unstoppable in achieving that goal. But you have to, in other words, you have to commit to that goal. And most people in the process are going to tell you no, 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 no. And you have to be so committed that you are completely unstoppable in achieving that. Now, in the process of doing that, you have to recognize that it is important to achieve that goal, but to a proof of concept stage. And I think that's very, very important because you cannot scale sales. You need to have you need to have organization, you need to have systems in place, protocol, um, to be able to take that from a proof of concept to a real scale operation that scales. So, and that's a very important concept, at least in my experience, that I learned. You have to set your goal and say, okay, I'm going to bring my brand, my practice, or my projects to this level, um, but or to this goal. But the you have to choose a sort of a mini goal that's related to that project, but that is lower risk in the sense that you get to that point and then you focus on operation. The operation has to be tight and perfect. So, and that's a very important concept that I want to share. At least that's been my experience, and that's my methodology. In it's worked so far.
Can you give us a personal story on when that clicked for you? Like you started your practice, you didn't know exactly how everything was going to work out. And then you this very important concept of just tying up your operation. Can you walk us through like what problem were you having and when you had your aha moment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I gave you a very concrete example. About 3 years ago, about 4 years ago, I started the process of trying to raise money, and of course, start to look at private equity and different sources of funding. And in the process of doing that, when I set up the practice, I you can do it. You can put it in two ways, right? You can set up one single location that has amazing state of the art technology, and people come to this location, or you can have several smaller locations in different areas. South Florida, I mean, in there are advantages and disadvantages of either one of those. But I was too aggressive and too fast in opening up several offices in South Florida in order to kind of reach a broad geography. And then the complete example is that when you open 5 offices, 6 offices, or whatever number that might be, and you do it fast, you're going to have so much operational waste that you're wasting a lot of money and you're feeding the purpose uh of achieving financial success. And a lot of it is money that then you waste. One of the groups that I was talking to at the time, it was a very seasoned business person on the other end. And of course, I have advisors and whatnot. But there was a very seasoned healthcare executive on the other end that we just kind of clicked. And he gave me the advice. And he actually brought this up and gave me the advice to not sell at the time and focus on the operation. And over the last 3 years, we've been closing offices that were relatively small and focus on maximizing the capacity of other offices in a way that and we basically see the same volume of patients with less offices and more operational efficiency. So that's a very good example of a very concrete example of how I wasted time, money, resources, extra personnel, so many things that I thought that were important, but they really weren't. They were waste. You were not. A lot of the offices had a geographic overlap, for example. So you have to be. You have to, yes, you want to cover for in that specific example. You want to cover geography. You want to be able to negotiate contracts where you say, yes, I can cover entire Miami-Dade County or Broward and Miami-Dade, whatever. But if you open 4 offices and you don't have the right analysis, the right strategy, the right teams, the right everything, if you don't have a call center, if you don't have a centralized authorizations department, if you don't have all the back office, the front offices, everything working very, very efficiently, you're going to waste money. And that is the point.
Miguel.
What are I guess what I struggle with here is I know the let's call it hub and spoke model, right? Where you have maybe one centralized unit and some smaller ones outside. Yet I don't think that we're maximized in our larger unit yet, right? I don't think that the throughput of patients is here, but I have a very stark competition in Houston, right? Because I've got private equity backed groups. I've got nationally funded groups that are public companies that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing. And in my case, and this is I stretched myself in a way because I felt that my growth by having some more rural offices with less competitors, yet with the same or maybe even more profound peripheral arterial disease issues, could then maximize, as I would bring them in for procedures or such, our base of operations. And so that's the way that I've seen it. So I got to a point where I didn't feel that I was going to be able to maximize. Yes, I could probably year over year at 8% growth, but I wanted to grow faster than just for 8%. And so the only way to create a little bit more of an accelerated growth, yet remain conscious, I guess, about thin overhead or over thinning yourself because you're paying multiple nurse practitioners in different places to be able to build these things. Um, but that's where I'm at, where I'm starting to think that our deployment should be rural communities, provide a service to the rural community patients, and get myself away from the competition that is the city of Houston.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in here. No, you absolutely deserve great points, right? I mean, Miami-Dade County is also very, very competitive. In one beautiful concept that I love in business is the blue ocean uh, concept, right? So that's in which is amazing. I mean, if you're able to bring services out to areas that are on the periphery where you have less competition, then obviously that's a very clear competitive advantage that you're going to have. And one of the challenges that we have as physicians is that we sell our time, right? So we are this scarce resource. We are the limited resource. There's only so much that we can do, and there's only so much that we can delegate to nurse practitioners, PAs, medical assistants, the entire team. And that varies significantly depending on the specialty and depending on obviously the local laws, the state, etc., and the quality of the team. But yeah, if you are in, we have rural areas here in Miami-Dade County because we have sea on the ocean on the east, we have the Everglades on the west, and we basically have three counties that are densely populated north to south. And so, that model, it's amazing, but it's hard for us here in Miami to replicate that.
So let's talk a little bit about workflows, and because I imagine, so let's talk to this concept, because Miguel said, okay, I don't want to grow at 8% just by concentrating stuff here, but from what you've learned, what things, if you're growing at 5, 7, 8%, can you tighten up with what you have already that will get you to, instead of 8% growth, 10% growth, 15% growth, um, based on what you've learned in your experience?
I mean, I have to say that 8% growth, I don't want people to think that 8% growth is not good. 8% growth when it's a mature practice is very good. Obviously, as you start the practice, 8% is not a lot, but a practice like ours, 8% growth year over year, it's amazing. We grow probably at 5%, 6%, and we're happy with that because of the dynamics of, local dynamics. So I want people to, understand that 8% is very good. It's very hard to achieve double digit growth numbers year over year. Mm. One of the things that I think is important in I don't know if your practice is all fee for service, but one of the things that, for example, that we are starting to explore is trying to have value based contracts in the cardiovascular space, and that adds a different dimension to the practice. It has a new revenue stream. It's an animal that creates some diversification in the style of medicine that we provide. And in things like that, help achieve that constant growth. But you're right, especially if you're going to raise money or sell the practice or just to beat inflation, right? You have to grow at a rate that is obviously higher than inflation and has to have some markup. So you whatever it is, you have to find a mechanism to achieve that growth, either by having more patients through just marketing and business development and etc., or through contracts that drive that volume, that new volume to you. And the other things that you can do is constantly finding services that could be added services to what you already do. For example, in our cardiovascular practice, do men's health, and that. I mean, having focus on that like tremendously, but it is actually a nice little business that adds some revenue to the practice. It's fun. It's fun to do. And the truth is that and I feel comfortable doing it because I see all these people that are far less qualified offering men's health, testosterone replacement, etc., and some longevity aspects to so a lot of people that don't have the proper qualifications. I'm a board certified cardiologist. I am very comfortable understanding how testosterone should be replaced and the benefits and who should get it, who shouldn't get it, and stuff like that. And patients feel more comfortable getting the testosterone pellets from the cardiovascular practice or from our practice than from some men's clinic or whatever that don't have that background. And so little things like that's been an added service to the practice that adds some cash paying patients, etc. Depend on the insurance. Those patients usually people are very conscious. They have the studies. They go a full workup before they get the replacement therapy, etc. And that's an example of an area of diversification that we have achieved in the practice, for example.
I guess if you break it down, I'd add one more component to that. I think in order to increase revenue overall in scaling the practice, you have to increase volume, right? You have to see more patients. B is you have to try to get as much money for each one of those encounters, which goes to the point of uh, Pedro's intentionality around negotiating better contracts and or capitated contracts with the payers. Um, Diversification, as he said, that's an interesting one that we haven't really explored, but that could be very interesting because I can assure you that most of our patients here in clinic probably could benefit from testosterone replacement. And then the fourth one that we haven't talked about, but I do think it's really important is revenue cycle management on the back end of the claim, which is you don't realize until you come out of a hospital the amount of money that's left on the table every single time via denials, particular notes, codes, structures, lack of pre-authorization. Pre-authorization, when I got so mad, this is just a stupid example, but I'll tell you this. So we got a pre-auth for a patient. Pre-authorizations normally are 60 to 90 days. Well, this fucking insurance company decides to get creative and they do a 30-day window, which still should be enough. But the patient said, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to come back. I'd like the procedure to be, the first week of November. My dad has a surgery, whatever it was. I don't know what it was. But my team was used to the 60 to 90. And so we ended up doing a procedure. We ended up doing and investing material, wasting money. And then when the insurance company came, they're like, oh, the date of the service is 3 days after the last day of the window, so you're not going to get paid. $0. And I was incredibly aggravated. But I've learned to do one exercise in business right now, which is where there is a problem, there is margin to be made. And so rather than, as an entrepreneur, getting frustrated and getting pissed, which is usually our first reaction, right? You have to reel it in and tell yourself immediately, Miguel or Pedro or Lucas, where there's a problem, there is margin to be made. So take a step back, take a deep breath and a long exhale, and then go back and say, okay, what do we need to do for this shit to never happen again? And what systems improvement has to happen? So I would just add that fourth part of the component, which is it's not only the getting the volumes and it's not only the maneuvering the front end, it's the back end and getting the money in the house, in the actual account, because it doesn't matter how much you do on this side. If you can't get the money in the house,
if you're leaking money energy, then you're gonna work a lot. Yeah, we're gonna waste a lot of your energy trying to make the difference, right? So
yes, you have to close the deal. And to second that comment, I wanted to add just a little bit something to that. Yes, revenue cycle management is so important. But also look at codes that you can add to your encounters. Counseling codes, for example, those are counseling codes in cardiovascular, meaning vascular surgery, anything that is cardiovascular related. Those are really easy codes to use that don't they don't add $100 an encounter, but they add a few dollars to many encounters. How many times a day you counsel a patient to stop smoking or to lose a little bit of weight or to do or exercise? Well, document it correctly, use those codes, and you're going to when you look at the year, you actually see a living increase in in revenue. And like that, like those codes, there are a number of them. Interdisciplinary communication, for example, how many times you call a physician and discuss a case with Dr. So and so? Many that we do that all the time. You text doctors all day long. Hey, what are you going to do with Mr. Smith? Whatever. Well, document it, create that, make that an encounter. That's an interdisciplinary communication code that can be used. Transition of care, for example, you see a patient that went to the hospital in the last 7 days or 15 days, use the proper codes, to be able to maximize the revenue that you can, or the value that you can create from those interactions. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention that I think is very, very important for us in practice to pay attention to is chronic care management. And and I think there is an opportunity, an important opportunity for the digital transformation of the care that we deliver. In other words, Medicare wants to start paying for more digital cares. And this is, don't quote me on that, on this, but but I'm gonna say just to make the point. But before COVID, there were like 2 or 4 digital care codes. Now in 2026, there are over 30 of these digital care codes. So um, clearly there is a trend to cover and to pay us for more digital care. I can show you an app that we co-developed with organization here to be able to create a chronic management program for reputation. The same you can do for PAD, and that things like that generate extra revenue to the practice as well. So, I think we have to be creative. We have to think outside the box. We have to embrace this digital transformation. I think that's a very important one. You have to really, really have very, very kind of operation. The revenue cycle have to be very, super optimized. And the other thing that is very important also that we haven't discussed is the team morale, right? So the team that works in the office, you have to pay a lot of attention to their morale. They have to feel that they're doing, that we're going in the same direction, that we're going to do something, not just a job, right? So we have to give them a common mission, and that's also very important because they're going to push with you. That means the first people to see in, 5 patients to 45 patients or to 50 patients or whatever that number might be. But the team is also very, very important.
Let's keep on the topic of kind of tightening the ship and making sure like everything's optimized. I see a ton of opportunity for automation of workflows, decreasing operational expenses, and ideally maybe redeploying some of the capital you're spending on tasks that are very repeatable, and then kind of redeploying that personnel into hopefully a more meaningful part of the job, taking part of the patient. From what I heard, you're exploring some of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So, for example, we haven't really gotten really operating positions in the last year and a half or so, but we haven't really hired anybody in the last year and a half or so. And we're doing more with the same team that we have, exactly because of ways of trying to automate and trying to create systems and also leverage our relationship with our call center in Colombia and to be able to take all those repetitive functions to overseas as well. But we use ECW in the practice, and in one of the things that we're exploring and we do some pilots is the hero connectivity. And I don't know if you guys use ECW or not, but I'm pretty sure all the big EMRs have the same concept. But these are things, for example, that the patient can do his own check-in, his own registration, and can even the system can even do the insurance verification for you, etc. And that right off the bat eliminates or decreases the amount of work that one individual has to do. At least a percentage of patients have done all of that and come through the Hilo platform already ready to be seen. So that's a very simple example and very, very important example of how technology is allowing us to do more and to be more productive with less human capital.
So where do you think, um, are there any valuable resources that you think physicians out there other than obviously their number one research is the Life of Flow podcast. But what other resources have you found have been useful for you in transcending this, other than obviously your own experience through trial and error? But any good books, any good courses, any good stuff that you've said that was really valuable, and I learned a lot of great lessons from that.
You know, no, that's a great question as well. Obviously, conversation with you guys all super interesting and fun, and you guys always bring up very good issues. I've gone through all these books. I've gone through all these fucking books. I've read them. I've gone through every podcast. Like it inspired me to do whatever, to be, all of that. But I will say that in one thing, if you have the drive to achieve that a goal, if you, and obviously you have to be driven and you have to be unstoppable, but you have to be able to also listen, right? But you, I think the best thing to do is to surround yourself with people that actually know about business things that we don't know. Because I've gone through a lot of these books, all the stuff that is I wouldn't tell you anything new. I'll mention 4 books that you probably guys probably know. But the until you go through it, it's like okay, how can you describe a surgical residency? You know what I mean? You have to go through it. You have to live it. You have to until you go through that. Um, Only then you can relate to the process and the journey of it. But you have to surround yourself with people that have really good business experience that that give you the proper guidance. And I've been very lucky to have very good friends and advisors that are older and wiser and more experienced than me in business issues. And yes, I don't think that doctors are trained to deal with these things. Doctors are trained to do what treat diseases, etc, but they're really not equipped at all. And I think even less now because I think every doctor kind of, most fellows, at least in cardiology, are thinking that they're going to have a job, employee position in a hospital system or whatever. And frankly, I don't know if they want to deal. If most of them want to deal with the pain of growing a practice, and you have to enjoy that grind, right? You have to enjoy that process. But I would say my practical advice after going through all of that is really surround yourself with a very good group of advisors, people there, and there are, you'll find in your network, if you think about it, all of us can find the older guy that we know through whoever that is retired but wants to stay active. So he can help us in, you can create an advisory board and meet once a month or whatever, and they can give you incredible advice. And that has been, to me, that has been the best thing that I've done in my personal story.
That you bring an excellent point, which is I've hired, and I guess you're talking about advisory role people, but I think it's as important that you hire the right people in the right role, right? Sometimes the problem is we don't know what we need to hire for. And so I've hired amazingly, and I've hired horribly. And the one thing that I've learned is you hire fast and you fire faster. So when you realize that there's a mistake, you're not in a business that can sustain, the pain of bringing somebody that's ignorant or callous or just not great and B, there come to just Jesus. I just don't think, we're in the business of growth and scalability, and I can't not have you not know how to do your job, or I can't not have you not know how to be professional in the office. And so that's one thing that unfortunately has viced us a lot is even in for example, I'll give a stupid example, the accounts payable, right? Which is keeping up with your, with the companies you don't realize the amount of money you pay these companies until you get into these businesses. And all of a sudden you're writing checks for 50, 75, $100,000 to one company and 100. So you do see a lot of money come in, but then most of it goes out as quickly. But if you fail to keep up with accounts payable, all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I'm the king of the mountain. I'm a billionaire. And then guess what? Yeah, you're not a billionaire, idiot. You just haven't paid anybody. And so you don't realize that having a person that's seasoned in accounts payable is so important. Somebody that's seasoned in RCM, so important. Somebody that's seasoned as your VP of operations, so important. Like those are like very crucial. I would say do not hire cheap. Do not hire your bestie. Do not hire the person that hire somebody that's good and figure out, do your diligence, meet these people in person, talk to their ex-jobs, find out if they're really what they put on paper, because paper holds whatever. And that's one thing that I've found has been problematic for me. And now I feel like my latest, I would say 5 hires have been pretty great because I think I finally understood what I need to do and the responsibility that I have in picking that right person for that right job.
Can you tell us, okay, so what have you learned? What are the things you look for? What are the red flags? What are the green flags?
First off is if I have a need, I'm going to pay for it. So this notion of I'm going to put an ad and I'm going to lowball to see what I get, bullshit. You go, you do fair market value, and if not, maybe even a little bit about fair market value. If you're talking about somebody critical, right? I'm not, which probably everybody is critical, but I'm just talking about, somebody is going to be managing thousands of your dollars. You want this person to be really proficient. You don't want them to come because they were fired for doing a shitty job. And so how many times have you picked up the phone and called a reference? I didn't ever do that until now. Now I call 2, 3 references to get an understanding, and I try to research because everybody will give you their best friend's reference. Yeah. But I ignore the reference. I see where they worked and I call that and I say, can I talk to the manager? And then I'll just say, does this name ring a bell? And you would be surprised how people spill the beans. Like they have no problem. If they were shit, they will tell you very fast. And then the other thing is, fuck away with this Zoom shit. You got to meet people. You got to read the room. You got to read their, how they look, how they behave, how they walk, how they talk to a waiter. You know this, I've told you this before. I like to take people out for breakfast before I hire them or for lunch or whatever, because I feel there's something that comes about seeing their interaction with other individuals that tells me this person is going to be horrible in the office. They're socially awkward. They can't even look at the menu, or they're awful with the waitress. There's little things that for me are red flags because I want peace. I want highly functioning individuals that want to grow and scale their own journeys. And that's something that I think if you can find people that look like they're thirsty and they want that and their hunger is there, then you give them a job and they're going to be pit bulls for you.
What else?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, it has to be people that fit your culture. I couldn't agree more. I wanted to say also that for those physicians that are listening, or people that are listening to the conversation, of the business of medical practice, say that you have to focus on 2 key indicators from a business perspective. One is revenue growth. And revenue growth is absolutely critical. Obviously, you have to control cost, and but very important to have that revenue growth. I would say that the number one thing that you have to focus on is cash flow. cash flow management is so critical and crucial in a small and mid-sized company, um, because you might have decent revenue and you might have decent revenue growth, but if you don't have a good cash flow management strategy, you're going to feel that you're always in trouble, and you always be in trouble because you didn't plan the cash flow correctly. And and if you are very good in planning your cash flow, from a business perspective, you can sort of weather periods of less revenue growth because you plan your cash flow correctly. And that's not a skill that we have. That's a skill. That's a professional skill. That's a critical thing. You have to really figure out, how if I if your invoices due 45 days, why am I going to pay you tomorrow? I'm going to pay you the day 44. You know what I mean? Like, you have to understand all these things. You have to play with all this money to be able to sustain that road that you need on to be able to build a new ultrasound machine and to be able to hire a new person or to be able to do whatever.
And all of it, by the way, is negotiable, which means usually the first contract you get from these companies is shitbag, and you turn it back. For example, I get an invoice. Um, Example A, I buy 50 intravascular ultrasound catheters to get a bulk purchase price on that, and they want to give me an invoice for 30 days. No, go back. 90. I need 90 days. Why? Because it just is oxygen. It's free oxygen. If you kick down that 90 days, the utilization and the revenue that starts coming catches up. So you have to try to kick those. The most they do nowadays I've seen is 60, but you can negotiate 90 if you're strong and they really want your account. They're willing to bend some of their own rules to get you what you want. Also negotiating bundle pricing, if you understand what your runway is, if you understand what the shelf life is. So that's where being a doctor also really helps a lot of these decisions. And I think it's as crucial as it's important to have good business people. The doctor part of this is really important, because then I would ask, okay, well, what's the shelf life? Okay, what's my volume? Where does that get me? Fine, you know what? I'm actually going to need 100 catheters, not 50 or 30. So it's going to be more now, but I'm going to save 30% in the next 5 years. So I may have to cough up a big price, but I'm going to save it here in the next 5 years. Or, for example, something as simple as what we've come to understand is that at the end of the month, even if I made $10, I'm probably just giving myself 7, because I know that the front part of the next month is front loaded. Salaries come in the first week. Payment of different things come in the first week. So I actually hold back from my distributions a percentage, knowing that that needs to float the first 15 days of the next month. And obviously you'd like to get to a point where your health is such that those moves are not happening 2 weeks in advance, but maybe 3 months in advance, right? 6 months in advance. And that's, to Pedro's point, is having a strategist on the cash flow and saying, okay, here's how much money we push out and comes in, and I'm seeing these trends. I think we need to start doing this and removing this and holding here and pushing it there. And sometimes it gets to a point where it could be uncomfortable, because you may have to push them into a point where they give you a credit hold. And it's like almost like you're doing it on purpose. You're like, I'm going to go on credit hold because it's fine.
What's a credit hold?
Credit hold. So, for example, let's say you got to that 60 days. Yeah. So you get to 60 days. Yeah. So you have to, let's say, 60 days to pay this bill. And I didn't pay it. And so it triggers the system to say, all right, don't send them more catheters until he pays these. So that's a credit hold. So they will not release further. So you can still work significantly. So think about it, 30 catheters. Yeah, I'll work for a month and a half with no problem, even though I'm late on my payment with the company, but I'm not going to be able to put another order in. And so they'll be like, nope, you can't. You're on credit hold. So then we're like, okay, let's let's go ahead and pay that because we need more catheters. And then we start. And you don't want that to be part of the health of the company, but those are the games that you can play.
So who is in charge? Who do you hire to be the cash flow management expert? What the position and what experience do you think they should have, and how do you test that?
Well, depends on the size of the practice or the business, right? In ideal circumstances, you want a CFO, and the CFO should be either a full-time CFO or a fractional CFO. But if you don't have the ability or the size, the money, whatever it might be, to hire a full-time CFO or a fractional CFO, you can bring a controller in, which is basically it's it's somebody that is very anal, that is an accountant but not a CPA. You know what I mean? So they don't have the CPA license, but they are accountants. They're big authors, and they basically and I think that's the plan B. But in ideal circumstances, the CFO would do all the financial strategies and financial engineering that is needed for whatever business goal you might have. But not everybody has the ability to do that. But even if it's a fractional CFO, I think it's a great idea, even if it's for a few hours a month, to get to make like have your books organized, and that you have your reporting system correctly, and that you can have good financial sort of visualization of your visual of your practice. So that's those are the two people that I will consider. I wanted to map what you were saying about the catheters. The other thing that is the point about the catheter is, any invoice, it's a 60 days, but then you ask the company, okay, but invoice me in 15 days. So you gain 15 days of the whole process. You know what I mean? In 15 days, that helps, because it's 60 days. So it's 60 days from you have to pay 60 days, right? But it's 60 days from the day that you receive the invoice. And then I tell you, "Hey, look, okay, perfect. I like that. Let's do the deal. But can you do me a favor? Can you invoice me in 2 weeks?" There's nothing wrong with that. And you gain 15 days, in the front end, and you basically have almost 90 days.
Well, another important thing that we haven't discussed, but it's very, very critical, is the intimate relationship with your CPA. They are essentially they're maintaining the ledger of your cash flow, right? At the end of the day, your CFO should be the internal eyes and ears of what's happening in guidance and strategy. But the rule of order comes from the CPA. And so you should get a monthly report that essentially says, this is what's gone out, this is what's come in, this is what you're paying in wages, this is what's coming back, here's your balance sheet. And the CFO uses that, and I use that. And for a while, I wasn't looking at that, and I realized it's a really important tool, because if I look at these cash flow balances and they start not making sense, like, okay, what is all this money that hasn't gone out, or why are we owing so much money? It made a trigger for us to realize that we had a freaking horrible AP person that was missing emails, missing invoices. The bill.com did not pair up with our Amex, that did not pair up with some of our, so things were noted as paid and they never were paid and stuff like that. And the only way we found that out was because the CPA report, we were getting internal feedback saying, hey, we're Gucci. And I was getting a lot of companies calling me. He's like, hey, you're in credit horror. What's up? I was like, no way, I'm Gucci. And they're like, no, you're not in our system. And then when I went to the CPA said, like, yeah, man, there's some mismatching here happening that shouldn't. This shouldn't be. This is numbers. Numbers are precise. And so know that relationship with a good CPA is crucial, because they're the accountants.
Yeah.
Hold you accountable. That's what they do. They're going to look at your enterprise. They're a third party, they're independent, and they're going to be looking at every single money that you move. Every dollar has to be accounted for. And by the way, the bank wants those balance sheets. So the CPA, if you have a line of credit, has to be producing that, because every quarter the bank's going to want to know what the fuck's happening with the money that they put into the company. So all these things all work collaboratively.
So, okay. Let's bring it.
We're getting to the bottom, by the way.
Let's bring it back. Let's start. Okay. You're starting off. What's your A team? Who do you hire? You are at 500,000 revenue. Who's your A team? Who do you have on your who did you add to your team? You're at $1 million. Who did you add to your team? You're at $2 million. Who did you add to your team? Go.
You can also say you are moving to Puerto Rico and your name is Lucas, because that's exactly what you're asking. You just want us to help you, and we will. You know what? You would be surprised with how fast you scale in healthcare. I don't think this idea of nothing versus like 50,000 versus, I think it's a pretty quick scalability if you are, if you do things right. And so the numbers add up pretty quickly, but so does your overhead. What I think you have to do is understand that you have an overhead that's fixed to some extent based on at least your capital purchasing and the stuff. And then everything in your power is to make sure that that capital equipment is being used as much as you can. That's it. That's the formula. You open the door, you find what generates the money, and then you need to maximize throughput through that, because you're still paying the same amount for either a lease or a loan on that equipment every month. And so you need to exponentialize the throughput so that curve becomes a parabolic curve of growth, and it happens relatively fast. I think you can open with a seasoned manager, a fractional CFO, and a good CPA. For a practice of one like yourself, you open up, you get a good manager, like somebody that knows. You get fractional CFO, and I would even advocate to say a good RCM, but there's services where RCM you could offload to an independent company that would do all the RCM for you. Pedro, what's your thoughts on a one-person practice starting fresh in a new place with nothing else than just experience?
Yeah, no, I respect I respect what you said, but for a one person practice, I will keep it very simple because I want to make sure that I hit the $1 million mark before I make sophisticated investments. Because you know, but that also depends a lot in the region that you're in. I the controlling the overhead at the beginning, well, always, but at the beginning is crucial because your expenses can run up pretty quickly if you hire a marketing person, a CPA, a CFO, a practice manager, a assistant, medical assistants, the leads, malpractice, the liability insurance, all those things add up a lot. So, if I were to start today, I wanted to start my practice, I will least a day or two, and that's how I started actually. I leased a couple of days, subleased a couple of days in a friend's office until I was sure, okay, this is working out. And okay, so I'm getting good signals. Then I made the jump to really start to pulling the you have to think of the practice as a corporation, right? So, because it is a corporation, and from a corporation perspective, you have to have all your divisions. Who's your legal team? Who's your accounting department? Your IT department? All of that doesn't mean that you're going to have an army of people that you're going to hire, but you need to structure core the practice as a corporation. But I think you have to have enough of a signal or of money in the bank or in credit to be able to to make sure that you're doing the right thing. I know that we're coming towards the end, but I wanted to close with a very good example of something that happened to me this year. Even with all these financial and even with all of this, we opened, y- as you know, we have two ambulatory surgical centers. One of them we just opened recently in 2025. And I have to say, objectively speaking, it's a beautiful center. It's just cardiovascular. It really is a spectacular project, and I'm very, very passionate about it because I started. It was my idea. I went out, got the physicians, I got the financing, I brought in the operator, everything. And but to the point we were talking about, even if all that planning, you have to factor in almost a year of no revenue in this critical center, right? Because you have to get ACA accreditation, you have to have a Medicare license, then you have to go contracting. Yes, you can use it as an OBL, but that doesn't put it in that doesn't put it in the profit zone. It is still losing until it opens as a surgical center. And the point is that we planned for about 6 months of all this, no revenue, and it basically took us about almost a year of no revenue. What that means is that you as a partner have to come up with unexpected capital expenses or uh, capital calls that you have to make to be able to taking project takes a months or takes a 6 months, whatever. So, so even with the planning, that all the planning and et cetera, there are going to be situations you can foresee a government shutdown. You can't plan for Medicare not coming in a month, but coming in 3 months. You, it just, there are things that happen that are outside of your control.
Well, I can remember one that was huge for us because we were at that very beginning part where we're like just dry. There's no oxygen. And the damn collecting system got hacked. I don't know if you remember this. You remember, I'm sure you remember this. And all payments for 3 weeks collapsed. There was no money moving. The clearinghouse, exactly. They hacked a massive clearinghouse of most of the major carriers, and so then all the money stopped. Not the patient flow, not the cases that were scheduled, right? All of that keep going. So we had to weather that. We were doing manual printouts and sending them over snail mail. It was crazy because you couldn't do anything on a computer. The whole thing just collapsed. And so that'll kill the little guy, not the big guy. Yeah. But anyway.
All right. So for next time, we're going to talk about negotiating with insurers. We're going to talk about sourcing financing, and we're going to talk about how to build an ASC. So stay tuned, guys.
Okay, fair enough. Pedro, muchas gracias. Thanks for everything, brother. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Un placer, un abrazo.
Un abrazo,
Bye-bye.
hermano. Cuídate. Nos vemos en Mexico City 2026.
Mexico City, yeah, 2026. End of life.
Business Mastermind, led by the great, legendary Dr. Pedro Martinez-Clark.
Bye-bye.
Ya, ojalá. Un abrazo, bien, hermanos.